continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I believe that Republican voters were ready for a new post-Trump chapter of the America First movement. I now believe I was wrong. Those are the words of our former colleague at AM 560, Steve Cortes, in a commentary he wrote over at RealClearPolitics.com, Only Trump Can Save America. And he joins us now for a little bit of postmortem on DeSantis, the candidate he was aligned with for much of the primary campaign, as well as prospective analysis on what Team Trump can do and should do going forward, as we now are in the general election phase of the campaign, whether Nikki Haley wants to admit it or not. Steve, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So let's do a little bit of the postmortem on DeSantis. We have to do that because I think some of the postmortem has been both too charitable as well as too critical. So I'm Goldilocks here a little bit. I mean, the too charitable is like this, DeSantis could have, the campaign could have never predicted that Trump would be this target of all these indictments. Well, that's not true. He was indicted once before DeSantis announced, and you could see the other indictments in the offing. So, I mean, right. So that's not true. But some of the other criticisms that he was some sort of globalist plant and he's not an America First or so on and so forth, and he was just there to be an obstructionist, I also think is untrue. So tell us what the DeSantis campaign and supporters of the campaign, what they conceived the race to be in the beginning, so in the run-up to his spring announcement last year, and what it turned out to be.
Sure. And by the way, let me just preface it by saying that I have nothing negative to say about Governor DeSantis. I think he is by a mile the best governor in America. And I'm very happy for Florida that they get their governor back full time because he's incredible. And the things he's done, not just for that state, but for the country, are remarkable, frankly. As far as the race, here's what I think could have been done differently and much better that would have made a difference. He did not respond to Donald Trump in the late 2022 era. So after the very disappointing midterm elections, right, when DeSantis was the outlier, when he was the really amazing success story on what was otherwise a pretty dismal night, let's be honest, November of 2022, there was an opening there where Trump was vulnerable even among Republican voters. Trump went on attack against DeSantis relentlessly, and DeSantis did not respond. And I think in retrospect, that was a huge mistake. He simply could not allow that kind of negativity to build up day after day with the platform that Trump has, with the resources that he has, without responding. So I think that wounded him critically, politically, going into the primary. And then the second big mistake, I think, and I say this as a media guy, right? I live in the world of earned media, doing what I'm doing right now, talking to you folks, for example. DeSantis really ignored the media, and I think to his peril. Yep. Early in the campaign. He was very, very selective about the interviews he did. He only did very friendly interviews in the very early days, and not frequently. I think that was, again, a massive mistake. I think you've got to blanket the airways. So
we were both critical of DeSantis for going into hiding and allowing really Ramaswamy to seize that opening to be on the cable, to be combative on the antagonistic cable news channels. But, I mean, those two mistakes you're describing, one right after the midterms and then one as he got into the campaign, they speak to a conception of the race. And that's what I'm trying to get to. Like, what did Team DeSantis think the race was going to be and their angle into it to be successful?
We believed, and I should speak for myself because I don't know that everyone on the team believed this, but I believed that electability was going to be a much bigger issue than it turned out to be in the and I was wrong, quite frankly, on this, because I believed that when Republican voters looked at the race, they would say, in Ron DeSantis, we get Trump's policies, but without some of the baggage that comes with Donald Trump. without some of the distractions that come with a Trump candidacy. Once the indictments came down, the reaction of Republican voters, which is very understandable, right? Because I think these indictments are absolute shams. I mean, they are persecutions of Donald Trump. So Republican voters rallied to Trump in a way with a fervor that I did not anticipate. And I think that completely diffused the electability argument because there was such a rally around Trump effect.
So when did you find out it was over? Did DeSantis have a Zoom conference with all you guys? Did you get an email? What was it like?
Well, he was super PAC.
Right. So, and also, I left the team months ago, actually. So, I mean, I left in September. Now, I was quiet about it, which was my agreement with the DeSantis team. I said that I would not be public until the Iowa caucus, and so I, kept my word. I did not talk about the race. So, people who follow my work closely will know on social media, my articles, my interviews. From roughly September until Iowa, I went quiet about this race. I talked a lot about politics, but just, issues and other things. So for me, I knew it was over in the summer, in July and August. And the reason I say that is we were spending an enormous amount of money, tens of millions of dollars a month. The candidate governor was campaigning incredibly hard. He had just a tremendous work ethic, like I've never seen in another politician campaigning. And yet our poll numbers were going down. So that tells me, look, when you're active as can be campaigning, when you're spending a ton of money, and I think mostly spending it smartly, and yet your numbers are going down, well, that tells me it's not workable, right? It's not a winnable race. And so I determined that in the summer, advised Governor DeSantis to get out a very long time ago. Obviously didn't take my advice, at that time, but I wanted to try to do everything I could to preserve his political viability going forward because he's 45 years old. He's a very young man with incredible talent. Again, I think he's by far the best governor in America. So to me, the sooner he got out of an unwinnable race, the better for him and for his future. So I wish he'd done it earlier, but I'm glad that he has done it now, and I think it's the right thing to do.
So both you and DeSantis are being treated in some circles as, a faulties of trachis. I mean, you're being treated as consorting with the enemy here. And I wonder, from your own experience trying to make some sort of rapprochement with Trump world, how that's going for you, number one, but then what that tells you about the possibility for DeSantis going forward when, he's got 2 years remaining on his, he'll be 26. So, yeah, basically 2 years remaining on his last term as governor, and then it's an open question what he does after that. So for both of you.
Yeah. And by the way, it's too bad that DeSantis is term limited because I think it'd be amazing if he could continue as governor. But look, I think for the broader question first, outside of me, I think it's incredibly important for Republicans to unify. And there's a lot of toxicity out there. There is. Our politics has become so tribal and so toxic in a lot of ways that it's unfortunate that even among people who agree on practically every issue, if they disagree on the candidate, right, to represent those issues, there's a super high degree then of stress and antagonism, which I think is unfortunate. I think, anybody listen, if you want to see some of it, go to my social media and go to the comments, right? And a lot of MAGA world, even though I've come back to supporting President Trump very publicly, a lot of MAGA world still hates me and believes that I'm some sort of traitor. I mean, that's, of course, ridiculous, right? And it's also not helpful because it's just not practical in terms of winning going forward. And look, what I'm going to do is do everything I can to make sure that President Trump, who is the nominee, in my view, that he wins in November because we are losing our country with amazing speed. The velocity of what's going on just at the border, just take that massive issue alone, is beyond anything I think any of us could have feared when Joe Biden took office. I thought things would be bad, Dan. I didn't know they'd be this bad, honestly, and this quickly. So winning is an absolute imperative. I'll do everything I can from the outside. Whether or not President Trump wants me in his inner team again, I have no idea. I've not talked to him yet. I hope I do get a chance to speak with him. I have spoken with his senior leadership team. They're thrilled that I'm back on board. They were very magnanimous about it and just said, hey, we missed you. Welcome back. Now, not everybody's taking that tack, unfortunately, although I think they should.
Yeah, but never did I think in a time like last night, President Trump had his former rivals on stage with him. So that shows, a sign of maturity that he's willing to let bygones be bygones.
Yes, and I think, listen, we're going to need that kind of discipline and that kind of focus going forward. I've also thought, his Iowa victory speech was incredibly magnanimous. I mean, it really was. I mean, he showed, I think, as you said, a maturity, a political maturity there that was significant and needed. And we're going to have to do that going forward. And
so what happens with DeSantis? So does DeSantis do you know if DeSantis is making overtures or Trump's senior people are making overtures? Is there going to be a beer summit between the two?
Right. I don't know, but I hope so. And I've not gotten to spoke to Governor DeSantis either since he dropped out of the race. But again, I'm trying to, and I hope that I get to speak to him soon. And I will certainly encourage him to do that because I think it's the right thing to do for the country, and I think it would also be politically helpful for him and help him rebuild his brand and his reputation among some of the primary voters who, again, I think unfairly castigated him. But regardless, like his negatives did rise dramatically, right? Like Trump's hits on him largely worked. I mean, those blows landed. Now, I think he can fix that. He's a young man, and he's got an incredibly important job and a platform to fix it. But I think part of that will be campaigning vigorously for President Trump. So I hope and believe that it won't just be that one line in his exit speech, that one line of I endorse him. I hope it will be much more active than that in terms of campaigning for President Trump, because I think he can be really, really powerful, and particularly with young people, by the way. He's a young man, and one thing we saw in Republican primaries is we saw this in our polling and then the actual voting in Iowa. He did very well among young voters. So I think he's a key representative for the Trump world to younger folks out there and can reach them.
What if you were back in Trump world formally and you had a chance to talk to the former president, what would you tell him he should be doing now at this stage where it's not formal, he's not formally the nominee, but he's all but formally the nominee, and he needs to look prospectively at the next 10 months, both in terms of the legal and political and the combination of the two challenges?
Right. Dan, I think the biggest risk to Trump, to his candidacy, to Republicans generally, is abortion on the ballot this November. Look, we have seen in a number of referendums, even in incredibly conservative states like Ohio and Kansas, that the electorate is just not as pro-life as I would like them to be. That's just the reality after 50 years of legal abortion in this country and a culture of abortion. So what I would advise President Trump to do, and I think he's leaning this way, but I would advise him to go the Federalist route and just say, listen, we argued for decades correctly that Roe v. Wade was bad law and that this decision should reside in the states and that it should not be a federal issue. If he does that, I think he effectively diffuses that issue for the presidential race and for anybody, frankly, running for federal office. And if we say this is going to be up to the states, and Illinois is going to end up, unfortunately, in a very different place than Alabama is going to end up. And while we always regret the loss of any innocent human life, of course, it's anathema to us. I also recognize that we have a system of federalism that's supposed to work. So if I could advise President Trump to go that route, that is by far, to me, the biggest risk, the biggest impediment to a Trump win in November is the abortion issue.
He is Steve Cortes, former DeSantis super PAC consultant and, of course, former consultant and advocate for President Trump as well, a Latino Voters Coalition director, in fact, for Trump in 16 and 20, and hopefully be a material participant in 24 as well. Steve Cortes, he writes at stevecortes.substack. Steve, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have me, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
A storm is on the horizon, and you need to keep the lights on no matter what. Your business relies on the power being on 24/7. It's the lifeblood of your data and computer systems. Weather-related outages from the power company are not acceptable. Your need for a source of power that's reliable 24/7, along with round-the-clock service that can dispatch technicians to your site immediately, is mission critical. Your business needs Charles Equipment Energy Systems on speed dial. These are the big boys, not residential residential or solar, but reliable industrial generators for emergency backup or events. When you need more than a 100-foot extension cord plugged into a small engine generator, call Charles Equipment Energy Systems. They keep the lights on with rental generators for job sites or power outages. A storm is on the horizon. Plan ahead. Call now to prepare generators for storms and potential power outages. Call 630-834-6000, 630-834-6000, or charlesequipment.com.
All right. You know, when you give your body the best possible fuel, you have more energy, you're stronger, you think more quickly. And that's why I take Balance of Nature. 31 different whole fruits and vegetables in those bad boys. 3 fruit capsules, 3 vegetable capsules, and voila. I feel good that I'm doing something for myself. In fact, I'm taking it right